welcome back to Vintage Story. Welcome back to Aura Fury, and particularly welcome back to EconBrony and Rammgirl, who are going to continue our discussion on how to run a server. Now, last time we covered quite a lot of topics, but after we'd finished, Econ said that he'd had a few thoughts that he'd like to share with us. So Econ, do you want to tell us what you think we missed out?
There's a couple of topics I wanted to hit on in a little bit more detail. We were going to hit marketing. So how do you grow your server? How do you get more people to join the server? And then server rules. What are the server and community rules that you make for your community?
Yeah, there's some very interesting ones on that.
So I guess we can start with marketing.
Yeah.
So one of the tips I have for you is you can actually create a bit of a brand. And when you come up with a brand, so a name for your server, a name for your group, stick with it. Stay with that. Keep a constant name. Any type of logo or picture that you associate with it, be sure to keep that as well. You want that consistency between all the different places where you advertise your server, whether it's in official Discords, whether it's in forums, whether you have a website. So any of those things, you want that consistent name and logo for, so that it's associated with your server. And over time, people will begin to recognize that. People recognize the Aura Fury name, for instance, in both the Minecraft and the Vintage Story communities, especially the Vintage Story community. And then the other thing to keep in mind is the server admins. Their names can also be almost a brand in themselves. So if you're always changing out your name, your Discord, your name, or your in-game names and such, people won't recognize it. And if you build a good reputation as an admin, that follows you. It follows you to other places, and it attracts new players. So it's really important to keep that consistency across the board, whether it's the admin names or the name in your community.
I agree with that. I'm sitting here nodding. I have always had, for a very long time, I've had the same logo, and I don't change it. And when I first started playing computer games, I called myself Ashantin. And I've never, ever, ever changed my name. So, I agree with that. It's a consistency thing.
Yeah. Next, it's whenever you're running a server, it is extremely important to make it clear that you have no world resets planned. So here at Aura Fury, we have kind of like I like to call it the Aura Fury promise now, that we don't reset worlds as long as players are still playing on the servers. So if it's made very clear that your worlds are not in danger of resets, the servers are not going to be shut down randomly, people are far more comfortable doing large builds at your server. So, of course, we're not a new server, so we already had that reputation that we've built over the years where people know that our servers stay up for very long periods. We had a Minecraft world go for 2 years, for instance, and it would have kept going had players continued on it.
Yeah.
And whenever it does come time to take a server down, I check with everyone to make sure they're not going to be going back on it. I put a big notification up in the community, and we chat about it. And if there are players that want to come back and plan on coming back very, very soon, the server stays up a bit longer.
Yeah.
And then when the server finally comes down, make the world download available to all your players.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to go back and play it in a single player world, or they want to start the server on their own, they have the freedom to do so.
More good advice.
So another
Yeah.
Another area that you can kind of generate excitement and get players to come over to your server is having a presence on the forums of the games that you play on. or any place where a lot of players hang out, and official discords. So a lot of these places allow you to post information about your community. They allow you to post information about servers. You can chat with players, and it's a good way to get people to be aware of your community and your servers and to find people. And kind of a neat little trick you can do on some forums is you can create what's a signature, and the signature will post underneath your post every time that
Good
you post on the
grief.
forums. And you can put an advertisement basically for your community there. So on the Minecraft forums, for instance, I created a banner ad that you can click on, and it brings you directly to our application to join our community. So every time I posted in the Minecraft forums, even though I was just giving people advice or I was complimenting somebody's work, I was also advertising for the server without breaking any community rules. And that is one of the very important things to remember is don't break those various communities' rules just to advertise your server. Be respectful of the rules and do not spam.
Yeah.
So if you're on the Vintage Story forums, yes, they don't have very strong rules about advertising for servers yet. I'm sure that will come as more and more people hit tons of advertisements up there. But only put one post up
Yeah.
in the multiplayer and keep up there. Don't be putting multiple posts. Don't put one post up saying we're recruiting new players and then put another one up about your server, then put another one up about an update you're doing. No, just be respectful, keep it to one. And I've already seen that in both the discords and the forums. There are servers that are doing that are doing multiple posts like that, and you want to just do the one. People will find you if you're keeping that one updated. You don't need 3 and 4 and 5 posts in the same section to get people to find you.
Absolutely. And as a YouTuber, I would say don't advertise your server on somebody else's YouTube channel. It's rare. People are normally trying to advertise their own YouTube channel. But just occasionally you get someone coming on saying, oh, I've got a great server, why don't you come onto here? And as a YouTuber, it's really annoying that someone else is trying to use your comments section for their own advertisements. You don't get it often with servers, just occasionally.
I haven't seen too many people doing that, putting it into the comment sections. Luckily, that seems to be kind of rare. But of course, I don't see every single one of your videos. So
the thing when you really get it is, I used to get it a lot in Minecraft with youngsters. I would always assume they were early teens who would, 2 or 3 friends get together, they try to run a server, they see a YouTuber and say, oh, why do you come and join our server? And you think, I don't think I'm going to fit in with you. I don't think you've really thought this through. But it's more in Minecraft, not in Vintage Story. I've not had any problems with Vintage Story.
Well, that's good. That's very good. So next is another area that can generate excitement for getting players to come over is having some of your players actually go out and post their work. A lot of times you don't even have to tell them to do that. They do it on their own because they're excited to share. But that generates excitement for the community. There are a lot of people that go, it's like, oh, look at that build. I want to go over and see that in person and get inspiration. Or I want to meet that person or whatever. There's lots of different reasons why after they see the pictures of the work or even videos of the work that they get excited to come over.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about a server spawn either. So just the player work. I mean, if you had a server spawn that was built complete without the players, without creative mode and such, and it was a lot of work, that's different. But a lot of times what every server focuses on is showing, oh, we have this beautiful spawn, we have these beautiful teleporter rooms, or all these different things that were done possibly in creative mode or whatever. And they are beautiful. They're very nice. But what a lot of people want to see is your community. They want to see what the players are doing. They want to see all the work that's been done outside of server spawn. The server spawn, you come in, you see, and you leave. You don't go back to it. And if you have a server spawn that's very big, it can actually lag your players out as they come in.
Yeah.
So that's why we basically have a very, very simple spawn.
One day I will show off the video of me joining the Aura Fury server. It was very early days, dark of the night, absolutely pitch black, and I couldn't see a thing. I didn't even think I was on the server until I managed to see some stars, and I realised I was in the middle of a dark forest. So yes, I think you do go for simplicity.
Yeah, simplicity, and we want you to have that more authentic survival experience, especially back then.
Oh, it was that. It was that because I travelled north through what was a night, and then just as it was beginning to get light, I hit a temporal storm, and I was still travelling north through a temporal storm. It was an absolutely astonishing start to a server.
Very memorable too.
Oh, it was. So
I
yeah.
know for some that can be really tough, but a lot of people buy Vintage Story for, well, Vintage Story. So they want to play Vintage Story. They're not looking for a super easy game just because they joined the server.
I mean, frankly, I just, Aladark, thank God, had given me the coordinates and said, come and camp at our house to start with. And, I was heading in a direction, and I sort of arrived there and was able to get some berries to eat and keep myself alive, because literally I'd travelled through a whole night and a day to get there. I had no idea how big this server was. So it's a lot better now. You do actually have a lantern.
Yeah, there's a bit of light out there at least now.
It was...
So...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you were saying that don't overdo it on the spawn. Other tips?
So when you advertise your server, you're going to want to advertise what basically sets your server apart. So what is it that makes your server special? And for a lot of us, we're doing like a vanilla version of the game, or we have the same mods as a lot of other people do. So that's not what sets Aura Fury apart, for instance. For Aura Fury, what sets it apart is the community itself, the people that's on the server. And that's always been what's been super special about our community. So I'm able to advertise that we're, a mature, we're a very friendly community, we're very welcoming, and people get that experience as soon as they jump on the server.
Yeah.
So it matches what my advertisement is.
Yeah.
And another thing that kind of sets us apart is how easygoing the admin staff is here. The admin staff is more of players on the server. And sometimes you can go really, really, really long time without ever knowing that certain players are admins. And that was always a goal of mine. I want them to be just other players on the servers, basically. I don't want them interfering in your fun on the server. And I don't want anyone to feel that there's anyone specifically special or favorited on the server either. That there's a bit of, equality between us all. So those are kind of some of the things that set us apart. I mean, there's some other smaller things too, and you can look at our website or look at our community page to see those items. But that's the thing, is you got to find out those things that make you special. And if you want to focus on something for your community, maybe you want to be a builder server, then that's what you put in there. You can put in there and say, hey, this is everything we do for the builders. We're not so much a survival server. We're more of a focus on builders. And if you're honest and upfront about that and advertise it as your big point, you're going to attract the kind of players that are looking for that experience.
Well, we've got a fine mix, I think, here, but there's a lot of people who are very, very good builders here. But didn't you tell me that you had a group that had come off another server? And I don't particularly mean in Vintage Story, where they'd been chucked off because their build wasn't good enough?
Oh, that was...
Server drama is best to kind of keep off of most of your forums and stuff. It's best to deal with server drama within your server and just kind of keep it quiet, because that any sort of negative publicity, that travels almost faster than positive.
You're right there.
Yes. Yeah, that was a very sad story. But luckily, there are communities out there that exist like ours, and some other servers that are out there that they don't have a standard for building. For us, we have it's something I'll get into the server rules, but we have a server rule basically where you just got to put some space between you and another player.
Yeah.
So then we don't have to worry about people complaining about the quality of builds.
Yeah.
So there are players that just have like a dirt hut, and that's fine
Yeah.
on our server. Everyone has their different goals and how they're going to play, and we support them in all those different goals.
And people like to go at their own time too.
Mm-hmm. So another thing that you can do to advertise, which I was surprised how big of a boost it gives you, is having a website. And the website is a great place to send people for information about your place. And then we actually have players that find us via Google because of our website.
Oh,
so they'll
gosh.
search Vintage Story server, and then our website comes up. So it can be a very important presence to have. And having a forums on your website helps with those hits as well, because it's a lot more different key terms that people can search
Yeah.
and then end up finding your community and your website.
Yeah.
And when it comes to marketing, that's the whole goal, is to
Wow.
have people find you.
Wow.
And lastly, having a YouTube or some sort of a Twitch presence, so social media presence, can be very important. It can be a channel that you create and dedicate completely to your server, which would be a cool idea. We've never done it, but also having YouTubers and Twitch streamers on your community also helps a bit. And they don't have to advertise you at all. They don't have to say, "Oh, this is a great server, you should come up." No, it's not anything about that. It's about just having a presence. So if the name of your server is just in the title of the video, right there, you've got it. It's the presence, and people go, "Oh, I want to go take a look at what that is." That's all it is.
So
very simple.
A YouTuber like me strolling around making videos where it says Vintage Story Aura Fury is quite useful.
It's very helpful. You have helped in many ways without maybe even knowing it.
And Tyrone is eternally grateful because sales of Vintage Story very quickly started shooting up after you guys started streaming.
You have helped Vintage Story itself out too by doing your videos.
Oh, I know that from the beginning because there were very few people who played to start with. And I started making videos, and friends of mine and other people saw them. And quite a few people came in just because they'd seen, the way I was playing and how much I was enjoying it. And I'm not anyone who comes from a TFC background. I watched Ethos play Terra Firma Craft and decided that hell would freeze over before I let myself in for some sort of misery like that. But I started playing Vintage Story by accident and just fell in love with it. And here I am, spending hours smelting and making things, but it's a lot better than TFC. I mean, it's just, a whole different world, actually. But yeah.
It is. There are a lot of major improvements and new things that set it apart, too.
Yeah. I mean, you've got a lot of streamers and a lot of YouTubers on this server now, so you're getting pretty good. But I have to say that, some of the things that we do, I think people like a lot.
They do.
Yeah.
It's almost like a little partnership between us all, because it's the YouTubers and streamers that are on our server get advertisement from my website. They get advertisement for other YouTubers and streamers, so you end up with more views and subscriptions. We had a couple that basically credit their start with Aura Fury.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
they went from only a few to having a few hundred, which is really, really cool to see. And of course, I'm sure that a few of the players that are on our server are because of them, because they introduced them to Vintage Story and our server.
Well, I'm sure that's right. The other thing that comes across when you make YouTube videos is the interaction with other members of the community and the endless kindness that you get. Me saying, "Oh, I'm lost again, where am I?" and somebody coming and fishing me out and taking me home. I mean, this sort of thing, I got stuck on a translocator the other day, so many people logged out just so that I could get home. That sort of
Oh,
kindness, yeah, they had to. That sort of kindness can't be bought. And it comes across very strongly in videos when people are kind to you. It really does. And when they're welcoming. And I turned up at Zescu when he just started out of the blue and said, oh, do you mind if we record here? No, go ahead, who would have thought that now he's sort of gifting us with all sorts of things? So, yeah, I think it does you a lot of good when you've got YouTubers. I remember that Tyron was giving a talk on his new game, and somebody said, oh, do you have any YouTubers yet, and expecting the answer to be no. And he was able to say, yeah, I've got 5. Because 3 of us came in as a group. I don't know who the other 2 were at that point. But yeah, and it does say something if people want to make videos on your server.
very cool.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll move on to that fun topic of rules next. So obviously every community's got to have those basic community rules, and I'm not going to spend much time on those. Those are your respect others, don't grieve, don't steal from others, things like that. Where people tend to forget is having rules for server performance, and this is where it gets tricky, because you have to balance between allowing people to have fun and making sure your server still runs, because if your server lags like crazy, it's no fun.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out that right balance, and it's going to take experimenting. So when you first start a server, don't expect to have that set of rules perfect, even if you've played in that game before, because there's always going to be something new that somebody discovers that lags the heck out of your server, and you've got to make a new rule for it. It's been a lot of years of learning when it comes to server performance rules, and I'm constantly adjusting. And of course, when you go into new games, you got to start all over again for learning.
Yeah.
So I am very much learning right now for Vintage Story and experimenting. And the thing you got to remember is these rules you make have to be at least somewhat policeable or enforceable. You can't just sporadically enforce them. That's not fair. So you have to make sure that you're doing it fair across the board and enforcing it everywhere you go. And that goes with your basic community rules too. You can't play favorites. If you have a very important YouTuber that on your channel, on your server that is breaking the rules, and you got to get rid of them, or whatever your rule is. So if you have a rule that says that they grieve and there's no warnings for something like that, you want to be very strict, then you have to get rid of them too. Same thing with Patreons. I have had to ban a Patreon before. So you can't allow money to make that difference either. The overall community and the respect for the rules are extremely important. So you have to be fair across the board, no matter how important of a member they are.
I agree with that. There's a Minecraft video where the Hermitcraft guys were playing, and I remember that Mumbo Jumbo had logged off, and he's a red tuber, what do they call it, red stoner, and he got this automatic chicken generator, and he'd forgotten to turn it off, and the server was slowing, and he had to come back on, and it took him half an hour to get across his room. He was moving at sort of 1 pixel a minute or something. It was so slow. And he managed to break this thing to let the chickens out. And this chicken explosion, and he'd managed to basically bring his server to a halt. Now, that was an accident, but you could see what the rules are. But how do you police it on a server this big? I mean, I think you have a rule that there's only a certain number of animals we're allowed to have, isn't there?
Correct. So for that, even when I made the rule, I said that it was more of a target.
Yeah.
And the reason I made it that way, and I made it more open, because I understand in Vintage Story you can have pig explosions.
Yeah.
You can log off with 5 chickens and log back on with 20.
Yeah.
So it's very hard.
Well,
So it's a
yeah,
big suggestion. That's not one of my
yeah,
strict rules per se. So it's just everyone's aware to kind of work together to keep the animal populations
yeah.
down. That's one that you definitely give warnings for. You wouldn't just kick somebody immediately for if you find too many animals.
I
I mean,
said, Sesku said, oh, you were streaming at my base and they saw I had 40 pigs and I've had to kill them.
yeah, he's been saying I haven't gotten my server punishment yet over in the chat. That's like, well, if you went and fixed it, I've got nothing to come and yell at you for, because this is just kind of something that we're all working together on. It's
But
not one of our super strict rules.
yeah, I mean, we're miles from anywhere. Okay, we're making YouTube videos, but if we weren't, how would you know that we had 100 pigs in a pen?
The server would feel it. You would not
Really?
believe the lag that you would get from animals, only because we have a lot of experience with it in Minecraft. People would
Yeah.
have sheep farms and chicken farms with hundreds of animals, and the
Yeah.
server felt it.
In Minecraft, I could actually run a test, and then it would tell me where the server problem is, and I could jump
Yeah.
over there and find you.
But there's
It was
nothing like that in Vintage Story, is there?
Correct. There's not, and that's why policing's a bit more difficult. So I depend a lot on the community to self-police. A lot of times, community members will say things to each other without even telling me, which
Yeah.
is my favorite. Then the admins don't have to get involved, and the admins don't need to be involved in everything, especially simple things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, every so often I'll get an anonymous message or something that says, "Oh, such and such player has 100 pigs." So then I say, go over, take a look, and send a message to him saying, "Hey, can you please cool down the pig population so the server can run better?" And generally speaking, performance rules, if most people agree with them, for one thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
will be very supportive.
Yeah,
of them, and will work with you.
Yeah.
Yep. So I haven't really had too many issues. I had more issues over in Minecraft servers, specifically with running water. People like to make a lot of different things with lots of running water, and that's very laggy on Minecraft servers.
No, I didn't
So
know
that was one that I had to police quite a bit. I would use those tests to figure out where it was, teleport there, see if that's the actual issue, then send messages saying you got to get this fixed by X amount of time.
Yeah.
And generally they were very understanding.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. I think most people are good human beings. And those are the sort of problems that people can set up almost accidentally through not thinking about it. But what about the problems where you get people who do things that really are sort of antisocial?
Oh, so they just do it even after you talk to them?
Yeah.
Oh, you give them a second warning and a time frame, and if they still don't do it, then the admin comes in and fixes the problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes you lose that player because of it, but unfortunately that's kind of the road you have to take,
Yeah.
because as I was saying earlier in the video, you have to be fair for everyone.
Yeah. Well, it strikes me that on this server, most people I've met so far tend to be constructive and helpful rather than griefing and nasty. So, it's not that sort of server.
We've been very fortunate so far. I'm sure at some point we'll have to deal with that, but I can hope that it'll never happen.
Oh, good. Anything else on rules?
Well, the other thing I kind of laughed about too is when you have rules, it's when somebody breaks a rule and you're saying, like, how do you know when to enforce it? How do you know when to go and change it? It's better to underreact than overreact, only because, if people do something out of thinking, oh, I have to do this because this is the server rule, then you might end up with, like, the bunny killer episode where we had an entire flock of bunnies destroyed. So you kind of have to be careful with people overreacting rather than just, like, taking the extra steps to make sure that communication's enforced first, because you don't want to go and enforce a rule so strictly and so harshly that people are scared to have anything on the server. Then
you had a bunny flock destroyed?
Yeah. I didn't. It was just an episode we had heard about, but it was just the idea that, it was somebody who had taken measures that, probably shouldn't have been taken, but it was talked about afterward, but it was just the idea that they were doing it, enforcing the server rules and not really thinking about, oh, maybe we should have discussed that one first. So and you want to make sure that the rules are something that, everybody agrees on them, but at the same time, we don't freak out over it either. It's not something so panicked over that if you have 11 pigs, somebody's not going to come and freak out over your 11 pigs. It's not going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah, yeah.
So the final category of rules is I just call miscellaneous or other rules. And there's one particular rule that anyone listening to this video and wants to start a community, I hope you put this rule in. It's a very important rule. It's all about protecting what you call your ecosystem. So your ecosystem is everyone that basically makes your community possible. So the two very important parts of that ecosystem is the game developers and the mod creators. And if you're wondering what kind of a rule would you need to protect them, especially if they're not even on your server, you want to protect them from people who are going and reporting bugs that are because of your server itself. So what you want to do is make a rule that says any bug that is found in your community needs to be reported to the admins first. And then the admins and you can work through to find out if that bug is actually of the game, if it's of a mod, or if it's of the server itself. So that way you're not sending modders and game devs all this information that's going to waste their time or send them on wild goose chases, and it can be very frustrating for modders and game devs to get tons and tons of bug reports that don't have anything to do with their mod or game.
I find that astonishing. Yeah, it's a point that never occurred to me.
It's very, very important, and it's something that I have had for my community ever since the beginning, is having that rule where everything has to be reported here first, because I don't want those modders or the game devs bothered with things that don't have anything to do with them.
Agreed. Just thinking, I must go and read these rules, actually.
We keep them on our website, so they're always there for everyone to be able to see. And if you're looking for an example of server rules to go take a look at, feel free to check out our rules if you're looking to develop a community. Yeah. And I am perfectly fine if you ever hit me up in PMs on the Discord. I'll gladly answer questions or comments in the videos. I enjoy helping people.
Okay. I think you have to. I can't believe how much experience has come out in this conversation, and lots of points I wouldn't have thought about. It's very helpful. Any other points you want to make?
I think we've pretty much hit everything, but yeah, sometimes having some rules to make sure that you don't have a bunch of server drama happening helps. So like keeping politics to a minimum is a big one to help with that. But I consider that part of the basic community rules, so I won't spend too much time on that.
Yeah, I hope so. One of the worst things I think I've been on was a cruise on a fairly small sailing ship, and a real sailing ship, going across the Atlantic Ocean, sailing across it, and finding out that two of the people who were Americans, both very nice people, were on opposite sides of the Obama-Trump debate. That got really interesting.
Oh boy.
And there is no common ground, and you just have to keep away from that sort of politics, and you have to be so careful.
So the last thing I want to talk about real quick is just a little thing I haven't hit on dealing with rule breakers themselves.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've already hit be fair and make sure that you treat everyone the same when it comes down to the rules. And as Rammgirl had said, don't overreact. That's a big one. But the last one is make sure that you do your research before you assume somebody broke the rules.
Yeah.
If you do not have evidence that they have broke the rules, there's nothing you can do. And it can be very frustrating as an admin to have somebody that's breaking rules and you have no proof of it. But you're just going to have to wait and find that evidence, because if you start throwing people out, you're going to throw somebody out that's innocent. It's almost guaranteed you will do it eventually. Even if the community comes to you, like it could be 5 people and they can say, I know that this person's hacked our server or something silly like that.
Yeah.
you've got to be patient. You've got to figure out the truth behind everything before you go and act.
Yeah.
It is extremely important, and that's
Yeah.
my last tip.
And a very good one. Well, I can't thank you enough. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, both of you, for those very, very excellent tips and advice on basically marketing and rules on a server. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for coming and chatting with us. Bye.
Oh, I enjoy it. Bye-bye.
Bye.